President Obama and congressional Republicans came no closer to ending a standoff today that has forced the first government shutdown in 17 years and thrown hundreds of thousands of federal employees out of work. The standoff has raised new concerns about Congress's ability to perform its most basic duties. An even bigger battle looms as Congress must raise the debt limit in coming weeks or risk a U.S. default that could affect global markets. Joining me to take a look at the details is David Dolan, senior correspondent at Reuters. David, thank you so much for making the time to join us. Of course, the big question is, should the debt limit not be raised? What is the expected impact on the U.S. economy? But most importantly, what does this mean for African and emerging economies?
Sure. First, just a little bit of background. I think it's probably good to note that President Obama today, he canceled 2 stops on a planned 4-country trip to Asia, and this was a long planned trip. So he's canceled stops to Malaysia and the Philippines. So this really shows you that the concern that the White House is taking over this. The government shutdown has now rolled into its second day, and there's absolutely no end in sight, it seems. And I think, one of the U.S. politicians, Louise Slaughter of New York, I think she probably spoke for a lot of Americans when she said, this is a mess, a royal screw-up.
Right.
Certainly looking at it from afar, where we're sitting in Africa, it seems probably bizarre that, the government of the world's largest economy has just, completely ground to a halt. So far now, markets are shrugging this off. We're seeing the Dow, it's slightly weaker today. But clearly, if this goes on, it's not good for markets. And it's not good for Wall Street, and it's not good for emerging markets such as SA or other sub-Saharan markets. We saw the sell-off in emerging markets earlier when there was a lot of speculation that the Fed would stop tapering. Now if worries continue to mount over this, then we're going to be hit with a sell-off here as well.
Would you agree with some of the allegations from a political point of view that are saying perhaps this is just Republicans sabotaging the continued presidential ambitions of President Obama? Is that what's at stake here?
Well, I don't know, but I do know that there's clearly a lot of political point scoring going on. And I think to say that a lot of this is political point scoring is a very fair assessment. And I think it's probably very frustrating for investors sitting in Johannesburg or Lagos or Mumbai looking at their screens and thinking, we're completely being held hostage by this political point scoring. The backdrop to all of this, of course, is Obamacare.
Of course.
Right, which went into law yesterday. Now, the Republicans voted against that 40-some times. So they see that, and it's the Affordable Health Care Act, I think, is sort of the official name.
But David, bring us in a little bit and perhaps take a step back with Obamacare. One would assume that rolling out healthcare to millions of uninsured Americans would be something that, irrespective of being a Democrat or Republican, would be an ideal that the government would want to strive towards. How do Republicans justify not supporting a rollout of healthcare?
I think there are probably lots of people all over the world who look at this and ask that question. And I think you have to see this in the context of, it's an ideological difference, right? So the Republicans, they're very fiscally conservative, and they want small government, they want limited government. They believe, the best government is the smallest kind of government. So, they see Obamacare as overextending the power of government, and that's why they're against it. So what's interesting, though, is there's also a part of the backdrop is we've got midterm elections coming up in 2014. So one of the New York representatives, a moderate Republican, a guy by the name of Peter King, said on U.S. TV yesterday, I think, he said that he believed that they would be able to get enough votes amongst moderate Republicans to sort of go through with Obama's plans to okay all sorts of government spending. But he said they're also very worried about the backlash from the right of their party come the 2014 elections.
Let's look at the other contentious issue. I mean, if we cast back our memory to 2011, when there was a standoff again about raising the debt ceiling, we saw the U.S. actually have a downward credit rating for the very first time. Is this not a concern at this time?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. So Treasury Secretary Jack Lew has said that the U.S. will exhaust all its borrowing authority by no later than October 17th, which would raise the prospect of a U.S. default on its debt. And that would send shockwaves to the global economy. If you think back to the late 1990s, I think it was 97, but I can't remember exactly. Russia defaulted on its sovereign debt. That blew a hole in the global economy because that caused the collapse of the hedge fund long-term capital management. So obviously, the U.S., the world's biggest economy, defaults on its sovereign debt. Not a good thing.
Before I let you go, David, very quickly, as an investor listening to this conversation, what do you do at this time?
Well, I think if I knew the answer to that question, I'd probably be an investor and not a financial reporter. But I think the markets are telling you right now that people are not looking to make any significant bets at the moment.